Today I decided to try a new format, Strange Encounters. This is a story about people you definitely wouldn't want to run into. Write your opinion about this format in the comments. I will read everything. Get comfortable. We begin after midnight. Mad dogs, today something really disturbing happened to me, and it ended in the strangest way possible. I'm 23, a girl, and after my shift, I was walking in my car when I noticed a guy clearly following me. I tried to walk faster, turned down random directions, but he didn't fall behind. When I reached my car, he spoke, "Hey, beautiful." My heart dropped. We're always taught to be polite so we don't provoke aggression, but something in me just snapped. Instead of answering politely, I looked him straight in the eyes and made the wildest, strangest dog barking sounds I possibly could. And I didn't stop. I just acted like a complete psychopath. You should have seen his face, a mix of disgust and fear. He immediately turned around and left. Of course he did. I'm home now. I still can't believe I did that. But I realized one thing. Men are not interested in crazy. 10 out of 10. I highly recommend going feral if you want to stay safe. The girl in the mall, the moment I fully and irreversibly believed in the paranormal, happened in a shopping mall. I was there with my mom and my sister. My mom stayed behind at Macy's choosing cosmetics, and my sister and I went to a jewelry store. On the way, we passed a lounge area with couches and tables. And suddenly I felt it, that sticky feeling of someone staring at the back of my head. I turned around and locked eyes with a girl. At first, I thought she was sitting there with her family because she was leaning her arm on a woman sitting next to her on the couch. But the longer I looked at her, the more terrified I became. She was unnaturally pale and smiling, but with her mouth closed. She was wearing a white dress, and her hair hung down on both sides of her face, exactly like the girl from The Grudge. She didn't blink. She just stared at me. Eventually, I stopped and turned to my sister to ask if she saw that creepy girl. That MY sister asked, "Which one?" I pointed at the couch where she had just been sitting. But there was no one there anymore. I looked around. Nothing. The woman she had been leaning on didn't even react, as if no one had been there at all. This story is completely true, and that's why I believe in ghosts. The strange old woman in the snow. I live in Pennsylvania, and we've been completely buried in snow lately. I have a job interview tomorrow, so I spent 3 hours digging my car out. Finally, the car was free, warmed up, and I decided to go to the pharmacy now. So I wouldn't waste time tomorrow. It's about 15 miles away, around a 20-minute drive. When I arrived, there was an elderly woman standing at the entrance, just staring at me. I didn't think much of it and went inside. When I came out, she was gone. I got into my car, closed the door, and a second later, she was knocking on my window. I rolled it all the way down. My mom later told me that was a stupid thing to do. Never do that. I asked, "What's wrong?" She asked, "Where's the nearest store?" I said, "Right behind you." She said, "No, another one." I suggested a market across the street. She said, "No, another one." Then it hit me. She meant a supermarket that's about a 10-minute drive away. She asked, "Can you give me a ride?" I called my daughter, but she's not answering. I asked how she even got here. She said she walked. I asked, "From where?" And she named my area. That means she walked those same 15 miles on foot in freezing cold and heavy snow. Something didn't add up. I offered to call her an Uber. She said she doesn't like taxis because they take too long. Then she started insisting again that the store was very close, even though it wasn't. At that moment, panic kicked in. Part of me was thinking, give the old lady a ride, do a good deed, earn some karma. But another part was screaming that anything could happen in that car. She could kidnap me, rob me, or worse. I told her I was in a hurry and couldn't help. She kept pleading a little longer, trying to guilt-trip me, but I stood my ground. Eventually, she walked away. And here's the strangest part. She didn't approach anyone else. She was waiting specifically for me to get into my car. As I drove off, I saw in my rearview mirror how she turned her head and followed my car with her eyes. I'm 18. I'm a black girl, and I look younger than my age. Most people think I'm around 15. I almost gave in because I always feel uncomfortable saying no to strangers, but I'm glad I trusted my instincts. Maybe she really was just an old woman who needed help, but I wasn't going to find out. The name Car Mistake, I swear on everything. This is 100% true. It happened around Christmas at my parents' house. Here's the context. My brother is married to Amanda. My mom wanted to bring both families together, so she invited Amanda's mother, Diana, and her sister, Isabella, for dinner to make everything look nice and formal. My mom decided to set out name cards on the plates. She planned to seat Amanda's mom and sister next to each other. And this is where things get strange. When my mom was writing the name card for Isabella's seat, she still can't explain why. But instead of writing Isabella, she wrote the name Amber. Without noticing the mistake, she placed the card on the table. When everyone started sitting down, Diana looked at the seat next to her, saw the name Amber, and immediately burst into tears. It turned out Diana had another daughter named Amber. She died tragically when she was only 5 or 6 years old. The creepiest part? No one in our family knew about this. We had absolutely no idea Amber even existed. And my mom definitely couldn't have known. She couldn't have mixed up the names because the name Amber had never once been mentioned in our home. We were all in shock. Since there's no logical explanation for how my mom pulled that name out of nowhere, we believe it was a sign. A small message from the other side, letting her mom know that she was there with us that night. A similar thing happened to me, and I completely believe stories like this. A couple of months ago at work, something strange happened to me, like someone briefly took over my mind. I was filling out a patient's medical form, and when it was time to write the last name, I suddenly wrote something completely random. Not even a name, more like a nickname. Let's say the last name was Smith, but instead, I randomly wrote Gizmo. I even laughed out loud at myself. Gizmo? Where did that even come from? My co-worker sitting next to me looked up and asked, "What did you just say?" I repeated, Gizmo, and she started crying. She said, "Today would have been my dad's birthday. He passed away suddenly last year. Gizmo was a nickname he used to call me." She admitted she'd been sad all day, thinking about him, and then she suddenly heard me say that word out loud. It was a surreal moment, but it actually made her feel better. I believe things like this happen when someone from the other side is trying to send a message and uses us as a channel. Here's the story. 2 years ago, I was 20 and my friend and I rented a house. The house was great, the rent was expensive, and the landlords never bothered us. Perfect. Nearby lived a nice family mom, kids, and the dad was a police officer. That's important. Our house had a semi-basement. The entrance was only from outside. It was creepy, weird graffiti, holes in the walls, a huge crack in the foundation going down into the ground. We only kept Christmas decorations and an old armchair there, so we never really locked it. We also have a dog, a mini Australian shepherd. He might bark, but he's actually very friendly. Say a couple of nice words to him, and he'd probably hand you the keys to the house and the safe. So one day I come home from work, and the neighbor cop tells me, "Some guy in a red pickup came into your yard and tried to get into your basement. Said he wanted to check the boiler serial number." Great, just great. The neighbor scared him off. We contacted the landlord and found out it wasn't him, it was the previous owner of the house. Let's call him Jim. Jim disappeared for a couple of days, and then a knock on the door. I open it, and there are 2 detectives from another state. Who are they looking for? Jim. Why? Turns out there's a warrant for his arrest, weapons theft, and illegal substances, and my address was in their system. They immediately figured Jim had hidden something in my basement and was trying to get it back. They told us to urgently put a lock on the basement because no one knew how long he'd already been sneaking around there. While the detectives were preparing their operation, Jim came back 2 more times. Once he was caught on camera trying to break in. The second time he told my landlord he came to pick up a chicken coop even though he had told the neighbor it was about the boiler. Then one day I come home, the basement has been broken into. We had already put a lock on it. Everything was rummaged through. The detectives came with dogs, searched everything, even that hole in the ground, but found nothing. Time passes. Then we had a tornado. After one storm, my neighbor and I were walking around the house, and she asked, "Hey, was that basement window always broken?" No, it wasn't. Jim strikes back. "I went down there, yeah, I know, not smart. Everything was turned upside down. My stuff scattered everywhere. That empty tank had been moved. I called the local cops, since the out-of-state detectives had no authority here. An officer came, looked around, and said, 'Probably the wind,' and left. Yeah, sure. The wind went through boxes and moved furniture. So my neighbor and I came to a few conclusions. First, he's not trying to get into the house. He only wants the basement and whatever he hid there. Second, local police are useless. Third, most likely, the last time he came, he already got what he wanted. For if we don't have anything valuable down there anyway, if Jim wants my grandma's old Christmas decorations, go ahead. Fifth, he doesn't touch my dog. So Jim, if you somehow hear this, please stop hiding your illegal stuff in my basement. I'm just a girl. But judging by everything, you don't want to kill us, so just stay out of the house and don't steal my dog. You'd return her in an hour anyway. She's way too loud that I went to college. The commute isn't short and the buses are always packed, but this time it was different. The bus was almost empty. I finished classes, stopped by a friend's place, then headed home. Everything seemed normal. I took an Uber home because I'm scared of riding buses late at night. I got to my building, walked inside, and saw a man crouching in front of one of the apartments. I hadn't seen him there before, but I didn't think much of it. Maybe he was visiting someone. I went into my apartment, turned on the TV. It was around 11 p.m. I was just about to go to sleep when suddenly I heard a very loud noise right outside my door. I froze in shock. It sounded like someone yanked the handle hard or slammed into the door, and then I saw my door slowly opening. My heart dropped instantly. Without thinking, I called my friend who lives a couple blocks away. He rushed over. We checked everything, but found no one. We went through every room, nothing. Then we decided to check the security cameras. The guard said he'd report to management, but he showed us the footage. It was the same man I saw in the building. He was trying to break into my apartment, and he actually managed to do it. But right at the moment he started stepping inside, he must have heard something and suddenly ran off. We called the police. They searched the building, questioned residents. No one knew who he was. The worst part? The guard had let him in because there were a lot of people coming and going at that time. Time passed, but they never found him. I still think he was watching me, learning my routine, just waiting for the right moment. I got incredibly lucky. Chapter 7. Mom, are you alone? Last night in our town, we live in Mexico, the power suddenly went out. That happens sometimes. So I decided to just go to sleep. My mom was upstairs lying in a hammock, talking to someone on the phone. At one point, the person asked her, "Are you alone right now?" She said yes. Later she explained she meant alone as in no other adults around, just me and my sister. After the call, she came downstairs and we all slept in the same room because it was too hot in the others. Around 1 a.m., I woke up to knocking outside. Then I heard whistling. I was about to get up, but my mom suddenly whispered very seriously, "Don't move." I froze. The problem was, I sleep on an old spring mattress that creaks with any movement. There was no electricity, no air conditioning. The heat was unbearable. But I stayed completely still, terrified to make a sound. A man had entered our yard. He knocked on the doors, then knocked on the front window, even tried to open it. You could hear him trying to stay quiet, but our old doors gave him away. Eventually, he left. But the scariest part came after. My mom's reaction. My sister and I were terrified and couldn't sleep. But my mom just turned over and started snoring like nothing had happened. When my sister asked what that was, my mom lied. She said it was probably dogs trying to get inside, even though the dogs were upstairs and hadn't made a sound. Only the next day did my mom tell me the truth. That man who came to our house was the same person she had been talking to on the phone, the one who asked if she was alone. She said if he comes back again, she'll report him to the police. But we live in a remote area. There's barely any police here, not even proper addresses. Honestly, I'm furious. Someone tried to break into our home in the middle of the night, and my mom just lied and pretended nothing happened instead of thinking about our safety. I don't know what to do. Should I tell someone about this? He lives in another country, but I feel like he needs to be reported.